Most people don't change because they think they already know what's right, what matters, who they are. And to be fair, that's what we're taught to do. Pick a side, defend it, stay consistent. But life doesn't work like that. The longer you pay attention, the more things stop being so clear. Strong opinions soften, certainty fades, and the questions get better. Not easier, just better. Because somewhere between what you believe and what's actually true, there's a gap, and most people avoid it. That's where the work is. That's where you learn. That's where you grow. That's where things start to make sense again. Not perfectly, not permanently, but enough to move forward. This isn't about being right. It's about seeing clearly and being willing to change your mind when it matters. So don't bet against the ones who question things, especially when they question themselves. This is Chasing Common Ground. All right, so I just wanted to hit record before we got going. And I want to say, Thor, thank you for coming back to the show. You were once on the podcast when it was previously branded as The Lifestyle Chase, and this is back in 2020. And when I was reflecting last night, kind of preparing for this interview, I realized how fast the time has gone by and just how much we'll have to catch up on to fill in the gaps. But just thank you so much for coming back on the show and kind of bring me up to speed on how your past week has been, just to kind of like frame things for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me back. 2020 does feel like 1,000 years ago. My last week, I returned back home. Last Monday, I came back from California. I've been to a film festival in California promoting my documentary film, The Impossible Journey. That was the first film festival for the film, and it was well received, so that was good. And it wasn't sunny California. It was raining the entire time. I brought my sister, who's actually born in the US, so she had to wait for me. She just zipped through immigrations and customs. Then I've had a speaking engagement a few days ago across country. Denmark's a tiny country, but that was really good because that was my crowd. I have a background in shipping and logistics, and everyone there were transport related. Apart from that, I have my book, which I'm pushing, and I'm currently translating my book into Danish. So it came out in English last year. And I have a daughter, and my daughter is almost 1 year and 5 months now. And it's my responsibility to get up with her in the morning. My wife, she works an hour away from here. So she gets up early and leaves for work, and I get up with our daughter and make sure that she gets something to eat and get her down to daycare, and then I pick her up in the afternoon. So that kind of stuff. So that's kind of been my week.
That's amazing. And there's lots of things that I wanted to kind of highlight. I got your website open on the other tab here, thorpedersen.dk. And your book, I want to talk a bit more about your book because it was definitely something that I wanted to spotlight, because I think some people who write shouldn't write, and some people who don't write should write more. And I think
Yeah.
you're someone who could definitely write more than what you've already written. But in terms of and how you pieced it together, what was kind of the inspiration behind it? And what would you say has been your most standout feedback from the people who have read the book?
Okay. Well, okay. Yeah. Those are two really good questions. Yeah. So first off, the overall structure of the book, I have a friend who's an author, and I went on some long walks with him, and he was teaching me all sorts of stuff. And he said that what I have is what's known as the hero's journey, which means you have someone who has a call to go out into the world and then goes through a lot and comes back changed. And he said that it's sort of like a home away home story. So you have this with the Hobbit or with the Lord of the Rings, that you have the hobbits that leave and they go out on this incredible adventure and they have a quest, and then a lot of things happen along the way. So I had to look at it like that, to say, okay, it's sort of a circle that I left home and I came back home. And on this circle, I could attach different stories. But then he said there's a second story, a second circle, which is that there was a woman in my life when I left home, and she was still there when I came back, and she came out to visit me along the way. So he said that gives it an extra layer. And then he said, go back home and then think of what kind of stories do I have that I think would have any kind of value, and draw a list, and just the more, the better. So I probably had 40, 60 stories, 80 stories or so. They were like, okay, well, we could probably do, a limited amount of that. And yeah, then, I was attached to a publisher in the UK, and I had an editor. And the editor was pushing really hard, saying we need to have more background story. So I wasn't all that interested in telling my own story. I just wanted to say, okay, I left home, and then I met these people, and this happened, and this is what was positive, and this is what was negative, and this is what I learned from all of it. But they were really pushing, saying, no, we need to know who you are and your background story. What you did is not something that everybody does. What pushed you to do this? They believed that the reader would want to know more of like, why? And when everyone else goes to school or goes to work, like, why would you go out and do this? So the book starts off with a lot of personal anecdotes from my childhood and my relation to my parents and my upbringing. And then it launches into my aspirations and what I wanted to do with my journey. Yeah, so that was one part. The other part is, how is the book being received? I'd say there are two camps. One camp says that it's a waste of words. I'm not giving any travel tips. There are no pictures in the book, and I complain too much. That's one camp. And that's fortunately the smaller camp. But it's true. It's not a typical travel book. It's a bittersweet story, because what I ended up doing to myself really took a toll on me. And there was lots of self-doubt along the way, and general doubt in if I was even doing something that had any value, or if I should abandon and go back home. So I do touch upon that. And it's not all joyful. So, there's that as well. So the camp that appreciates the book, these people say that this book is astonishing, that this book is very honest. A lot of people, they point out how honest the book is. A lot of people, they come back to that they had no idea how hard it was on me, and that this is conveyed really well. A lot of people tell me that this is, a fresh breath within travel anecdotes, because a lot of people don't talk about the hard stuff or the difficult stuff. They just talk about the beautiful beaches and the incredible encounters with people. So people see value in that. And yeah, the book has done reasonably well. It's out in English and in German. I'm working on a Danish version. Denmark's a small country, but that's my nation. So I want it out, and then it'll be out in Czech, the Czech Republic. A publisher there has bought it, and they're translating. And then we'll see where it goes from there. It's a bestseller in Germany. It was an instant bestseller, which doesn't really mean anything in regards to quality. It just means that it sold a lot of copies in a short amount of time, but that's still a good sign. And it's award-winning. So Nomad Mania is a travel forum with 50,000 members that are travel maniacs or travel enthusiasts.
Mhm.
And they have an award show, and they awarded me Travel Book of the Year.
I mean, that makes sense to me, because I've followed your journey since before I interviewed you, and oftentimes the things that I'd see you endure put things in perspective for me. Like, if I was having like a rough week, I'd be like, well, Thor's out there struggling in like blank nation, like having to question whether all of this was worth it or not. And I'm like, if he can stick to it, I can stick to my goals too. So it was like, and I'm sure a lot of my audience that either reads my Substack or that listens to other episodes of the podcast, like, I've definitely had a lot of feedback that they resonated with you as kind of like sort of their lifeline or their beacon of hope. So hopefully that for you reminds you that despite the struggle, maybe it was worth it because a lot of people benefited from all of that. Now, given that you just got back from that film festival, I'd like to hear more about that because obviously a lot of emotion probably went into that production, and maybe there's some questions as they were developing it. Sometimes people they get a little bit nervous when they're going to be in the middle of a film that's going to be in a festival. Tell me more.
Yeah, well, thank you. First of all, I'm happy that it's been meaningful to people what I spent the better part of a decade going through. I'm still unpacking lots of stuff, memories and teachings and learnings. We're coming close to 3 years since I came back home, and I still have a lot of thinking to do. But overall, I think it was good. I did a TED talk, by the way. I'll just push that for a second. I did a TEDx in Norway, and I opened that TED talk by saying if I had a time machine and only one journey, I would go back and try to stop myself from setting out on a highly ambitious journey. And then it goes from there. But yeah, as I say in the talk, it's a paradox that if I had not done it, I wouldn't be the man I am today, and I wouldn't know the things that I know today. The film came about through a sporting goods company called Salomon. It's a French company. And I left home in 2013 on the 10th of October at 10:10 a.m. I left in a pair of Salomon shoes. And I figured that if I kept contacting them and I kept saying, look at me, look at me, look at me, then eventually I might be able to get a deal done with them. And I kept doing that, and I wore out a pair of shoes, and I bought a new pair, and I wore out another pair, and I got a new pair, and I wasn't getting through to Salomon. And once I got to about 170 countries, I finally heard from Salomon. They're like, "What's your deal? What do you want?" And then I said, "I want new shoes." And they were like, "What? Yeah, we can give you shoes." They wanted to know if the story was true, and yeah, 100% it was true. I traveled through all these countries only in their footwear, and then eventually they sent me some gear, which was pretty cool. And then a few months later, they said, we want to do a YouTube video for our channel, just a 10-12 minute video where we highlight your story, if that's okay. And I went, absolutely, please do that. And they sent a film instructor to the Pacific to meet up with me. And this guy, his name is Mike Douglas. And Mike Douglas isn't just any film instructor. Mike Douglas is a ski legend. He is known as the godfather of free skiing. He's in his 50s now, and he's doing okay on social media. But if social media existed when he was in his late teens and in his 20s, when he was at his, at the height of his career, he would be the kind of person who had millions of followers, I have no doubt. He's responsible for the twin tip ski. His signature flip turn trick in the air is called the D spin. He's a really cool guy, and he was recently inducted into the Canadian Hall of Fame. He's amazing. He's also an award-winning filmmaker. He's been doing films for 30 years. Most of it relates directly to winter sports and skiing. So they sent him. He's a pro athlete. Yeah. And they sent him to meet with me. And he's so cool and so humble. And Mike, he started filming. He did interviews with me and filmed me walking about. And then after a few days, he realized this wasn't a 12-minute story. So he got back in touch with Salomon and told them that this is a full feature. And Salomon was backing that as far as they could. And then he took over. So the situation today is that we have this film. It's 1 hour and 42 minutes long. It was screened in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia not too long ago. I went there and showed an audience the film, and we had super good reactions. It was really, really cool. That was daunting, though, as the room with these people and being judged. But the film is 100% Mike's film. He decided how the story was going to be told, which clips were going to be used, which music, the color grading, everything. I'm just, as I learned to say quite recently at the film festival, I'm a subject of a feature. That's my role in it. I'm the person the film is about, but I didn't make the film. And in the big picture, if it gets sold, if it goes on Netflix or somewhere else, and someone makes a lot of money off it, I won't be making a lot of money off it. The filmmaker, and maybe Sal will make some money. Hopefully, I'll sell a few more books and a few more talks. But yeah, so we went to the film festival, and you have film festivals in different categories. So you have your A-list film festivals. These are the ones that we know the names of and we hear about in the news. And then you have B and C. This was a relatively humble film festival, which has existed for about 20 years. And it was voted among the 25 coolest film festivals a couple of years ago. And it was a nice little film festival. There was a really local spirit about it, close to Hollywood, but not really Hollywood.
Yeah.
And they had about 350 films playing, most of them short films. And mine was in there somewhere. I had a venue which would seat about 200 people. And I think a little less than 20 people showed up. Very little marketing was done for the film, unfortunately. And the film started 1 hour late, which was unlucky. And then, so because there was a delay throughout the entire day. And then when it started, it was running on 75% speed. And I sat in the audience and I noticed this instantly, like it's slow. And I sat next to someone and said, no, I think it's fine. I said, no, I am telling you, it's slow. And went to the technician and said, it's running slow. And he said, there's nothing I can do about that. I said, well, stop it and try starting it again. And he did that. And it was still running slow. And then I went in front of the audience and I said, listen, we have a problem. It's running slow. Here's what we can do. My hotel isn't far away. I can run down, get in a car, drive to the hotel, get my personal laptop. I have a copy of the film on that. I can be back again in 15 minutes if you want to wait. I know you've already lost 1 hour, but yeah, sorry about that. And they were super loyal. Everyone in the room stayed. Everyone wanted to see this. So that was cool. And I went out and I got in the car and I went with my sister to the film festival. She was still in the audience. And while I'm on my way to the hotel, then my sister, she texts me and says, okay, it's working now. It's good. It's running at full speed. So I still get my laptop. I come back. It is working. I get up in the audience. I have a friend, Nabil Kazi, he's Hollywood. He's 30 years of marketing experience in Hollywood. And he came to see the film and he told me they found out that the setting was set at 75% instead of 100%. So rough when they were playing it. So I think that also says a little bit about the film festival. And that, the 1 hour delay might have been that all the other films were playing at 75%.
Probably.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Now I've been to a film festival now, and so I've tried that. That's one more thing I can tick off.
Definitely. So something that I think is valuable about all of your travel and all of the experiences that you have is that you're able to provide sort of like a untampered with view on different countries, different perspectives, stuff like that. So I'd be curious to know, what would you say are like the two most misunderstood nations in the world from your travel experiences?
That's difficult to answer. Misunderstood. I think Pakistan is very misunderstood. I think for a lot of travelers, they value Pakistan, but I mean, India is really giving them a hard time. And historically, the government of Pakistan has been relatively hostile towards India. But you have all of these cases where the government doesn't really represent the population. The population just seems to be stuck with a system and an image, and there isn't much they can do about that. And Pakistan people are really kind. They were to me, and I hear this over and over from other people as well. So I don't think it was just me. There's a lot of hospitality in Pakistan. Pakistan is rich in history and culture and geography and food, and there's a lot going on in that country. So yeah, I think they They have a difficult time with their image, and it's a real shame because it is an extraordinary country. And I
Hmm.
think I would say something similar about Iran. Iran is a lot in the media these days. And again, there's a real disconnection between the population and their government. And it's a stunningly beautiful country, and it's thousands of years old, the culture. And it's a country where you can go skiing and diving in the same day. It's a country with a rich food culture and a supreme location geographically. It's a really fantastic country. And these days, I mean, especially the current U.S. administration are making. Actually, to some extent, I'd say that the U.S. administration has done a fairly good job of separating government from the population, saying that, okay, our beef is with the government. We want the population to rise up and take your own country and this kind of stuff. But yeah, no, it's a misunderstood country and underrated country, I think.
I want to pause here for a second because this connects directly to the kind of conversations that we have on this show. Chasing common ground has never been about hacks, shortcuts, or chasing attention. It's about long-term thinking, craft, and building something that actually lasts. And the same philosophy is why I built my podcast course. It's about fundamentals and foundations. How to start a podcast, how to structure it, how to stay consistent, and how to build simple workflows so your show fits into your life instead of competing with it. The course is updated constantly with gear reviews, standard operating procedures, AI tools, and best practices. It's not because things change fast, but because clarity matters. I want to share a quick clip from someone many of you already know about, Andrew Coates. He's a good friend of mine, and he is the host of Lift Free and Diet Hard, a published writer, speaker, and longtime coach. Here's what he had to say.
I'm going to give a shout to my producer because he's a beauty. Chris Little, he's the one who does all the back-end stuff. He does all the slides. He's the one who puts together all the ads. And I couldn't do this stuff without him. He's great. He's got his own podcast, but he's also got courses, and he will answer your questions if you guys are literally interested in podcasting. He's great at this stuff. So go check him out. Just search Christian Little on Instagram. I followed him. You'll find him. He's super.
If you're thinking about starting a podcast, or you already have one and want it to feel simpler, more intentional, and more sustainable, you can learn more at christianlittle.com/podcast course. And as a thank you to listeners of Chasing Common Ground, you can save $50 with the code Common Ground, one word, all caps, at checkout. Pricing is in Canadian dollars. Thank you. And now let's get back to the podcast.
Well, it's cool that you say that because there's a few other travel personalities that I've followed along the way. One of them is Yes Theory, and they had recently done like a kind of a deeper documentary on like the misunderstandings between India and Pakistan just from an outsider's perspective. Something that you've done very well in this interview so far is just like brought up sort of like other people who are profoundly talented or uniquely interesting. So I'd be curious to hear if there was like maybe a couple more that we haven't talked about yet, because we've talked about the filmmaker, we've talked about the guy at the film festival that was from Hollywood, where that kind of stand out to you.
There's a guy, his name is Rick Gassarian. Rick Gassarian is a podcaster, and he also works as a travel guide, and he has a travel festival, the Extraordinary Travel Fest, which takes place October this year in Bangkok. That will be the third time. And he's trying to reach every country in the world. This Hollywood guy I spoke about, Nabil Kasi, he's also trying to reach every country in the world. So you have sorry. You have I'm sorry. Yeah, you have a lot of these people out there that are trying to reach every country in the world. But yeah, so Rick, he has a podcast called Counting Countries, in which he interviews people who have been to every country in the world, or people who are trying to reach every country and are serious about it. And that's an interesting podcast because you get so many different insights from. Oh, sorry. Can we take a short break?
Yep.
Yeah, I'll just get a glass of water. Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. Dry throat. So it's interesting to listen to the podcast because you generally do not have two travelers that come away with the same perspective on reaching every country in the world. Some are better storytellers than others. Some kind of give yes, no answers and kind of stuff. But a lot of people that come on his podcast, they do really well in telling and sharing their story. But what makes Rick interesting is that he has this incredible network because he's been doing this for years, interviewing all these people. So he has an astonishing network of these. Some of them are high profile people who have reached every country in the world. And then he's also doing this travel festival. He did the first one in Armenia and the second one was in Bangkok. And I attended the second one a couple of years ago. And now he's doing the third one, and I'll be going back for that one as well. And my film is screening at his film festival this year. So that's another reason to go to Bangkok this October.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, Rick's a good guy, always very helpful. And he's also, he navigates different opinions and politics and all this stuff. He navigates it really, really well. I recently met someone who's seen to be highly controversial in the travel community. And I asked Rick about him, and I asked someone else about him. And this other person I asked replied back that he pitied me for meeting this guy because the guy I was meeting, he was a mix between, what did he say? Adolf Hitler and Putin or something like this. And I asked Rick, and Rick didn't say anything of that sort. He just said, "No, okay, he hoped that the meeting would go well and that I should know that he is controversial and that different travelers have different opinions about him." So he's really good with navigating the environment.
Well, that makes sense because you'd have to have your own fresh perspective. Like if your perspective is too affected by another person's bias or their experience, then it's hard for you kind of to judge. It's hard for you not to judge, I should say. Now, one of the things that I was thinking about, because being that you started off in Denmark and then eventually you got to come back home to Denmark, did you notice any major shifts in community or in habits or lifestyle in that period of time? Did you come back to something totally different, or did everything feel just the same as how you had left it?
Well, a little bit of yes and a little bit of no. So I came back to the same country, the same language, the same culture, the same people, same climate. What is happening around the world is that people are moving away from the countryside and they're moving towards the cities, and cities are growing across the globe. And you also see that more and more people are moving to Copenhagen, which is the capital here in Denmark. And that means that the city is expanding. You see a lot of building projects, construction is going on. And yeah, I think there's a far more foreign people in Copenhagen since I came back compared to when I left 10 years before, which I like. I think it's cool. I think a capital should have, a really diversified environment. So I really like that. There were electric cars all over the place when I came back. There were a few electric cars back in 2013, but it's common sight now. I remember back in the day when everybody was smoking cigarettes, and then suddenly they implemented this ban on smoking in public places, and then we all slowly transitioned into sort of like cleaner air. And then every once in a while, you'll smell that someone is smoking and you'll turn around and go like, there's someone smoking around there. I can smell it. Where's that person? It's come to that point from Before, people were just smoking all over the place while you were having a meal and in the vehicle and around kids and this kind of stuff. But now you notice that. So I say that because in Copenhagen, it's come to a point with electric vehicles that when you have a vehicle that passes by, which does not have, a fossil, something driving on gas, or you call them a fossil car or whatever, which doesn't have good filters, so maybe an old model, and you smell that the exhaust smell from a vehicle, it's the same experience where I turn around and go like, oh, what's that? Because I'm so used to the clean air from all the electric vehicles and other vehicles that run on gas but have particle filters that are extraordinary.
Yeah.
So those are the big changes in Copenhagen. And then for me personally, 10 years is a long time. And all my friends are also 10 years older. And so the community that I had in Copenhagen, pretty much everyone now has a family. And because they have family and apartments are small and expensive in the city, they all moved out to the suburbs. And so they can have a garden and this kind of stuff. So everyone's a little bit further away from me now. And also, there's no calling someone and say, do you want to go out and have a kebab tonight? You have to plan and schedule everything 2 or 3 months in advance. So that's a big difference for me personally. And everything kind of seems the same. When 2013, Denmark had just gone from 2G to 3G internet. So 3G was the new thing. But this transition across the world. So now I'm back in Denmark and everything is online. If you're not online, you can't do it. It's banking, it's government, everything is online. But yeah.
So the other thing that I think about, because you had all this time pass while you were in different countries, so not only were you able to experience the passage of time, you're able to experience the passage of time through multiple different points of view. Do you feel like the heaviness that the world is probably experiencing, like other areas more than some, but I feel like there's a collective heaviness because of all the controversies, all of the political things? Do you see a cycle where it could get lesser, or do you think it's just going to keep intensifying the way it seems to for the years to come?
I imagine it will intensify because a lot of the systems that we're relying on, the social media, the way that the algorithms are, these are very divisive. They force you, or they encourage you to choose a side. And then once you choose a side, then you get all the encouragement and nurturing and support around that. But they really want you in one camp or the other. And that's not how life and how most people operate. We move a little bit between camps. But you also see it in politics that, there's a little bit of give and take when you negotiate budgets and politics and that's the reality of how you make something function. That's how you operate. That's how a family works. That's how a workplace operates. That's how the humans are. It has to be a collaboration. It has to be give and take. You can't win. It's built on compromises. But in modern politics, I don't want to say modern politics, but in today's politics, many places around the world, you see that the borders are drawn so sharp that the other side becomes the enemy. And I don't know if there's a climb down from that. You would hope there would be, because if it continues in that direction, you get civil war or worse. But I don't see what would pull it back. Divide and conquer is age old. And the reason why it's still around is because it works. If you can divide, then you can conquer and you can build up your profile. And you see with social media, even you had this mixed martial arts, I think, guy, Andrew Tate, who worked out how he could say things that were so extreme that the algorithms were working for him. that in the comment section, you had people that loved him and people that hated him, debated each other because he was so extreme in his views and in his attitude. Yeah, it's difficult to say. It really is. What I
Yeah.
can tell you is that I've gone through the world, and what I'm very confident about is that all the negative stuff we hear on a day-to-day basis, the wars, the conflicts, the diseases, all of this, it's a view that we get through a keyhole. And you go out into the world, you get to open the door and you get to see what else is out there, not just the keyhole view. And the online world, all the social media we have and the platforms that people debate on, I truly believe a lot of the players are bots, and it's not even real people. And they are shaping some narrative, or they are doing the divide and conquer strategy. And yeah, I mean, I was promoting positive and good things for almost a decade, right?
Yeah.
And I think the people respond to that, saying, okay, well, we want someone to do that. We want someone to tell the good stories, the kind people, the nice situations, and all this stuff. But it wasn't getting likes, it wasn't getting shares, it wasn't getting a lot of comments. Like people, they just kind of shrugged their shoulders a little bit, go like, yeah, okay, so he met someone nice, or he had a good meal, or he saw something beautiful, or he discovered something interesting. The things that people responded to on my social media were when there was progress, when I got a difficult visa, or I got on board a ship, or I reached a new country, the progress stuff people really responded to, that got a lot of likes and shares and this kind of stuff. Then when my wife came out to visit, this love story, people, they loved that, so that would get a lot of likes, that now ultra wifey is out next to me again and this kind of stuff. And then the third thing would be when I was depressed, when I was in doubt, and when I really didn't know if I could carry the weight of all of it anymore. And when I was thinking about going home, or just wondering why I was even out there doing what I was doing, people responded to that. But they were not responding so much to my positive promotion.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I'm very skillful with social media. So maybe someone else could promote the positive in a better way than me and get a much larger reaction. I'm just saying it was very clear to me that that was not what was popular in my project, no matter how hard I tried to say,
Yeah.
a stranger, a friend you've never met before, or I feel safe in this country, or this is completely underrated. People did not respond to it. Yeah, so I think that shaped my opinion, at least, about social media. I think the algorithms, they want people to go out and get crazy and say radical stuff and go bonkers.
I agree. I mean, something that I think is going to be increasingly important for people is to have somewhere to find like community or a sense of purpose. And I've been trying to think of what that would look like. So I'm going to borrow your brain for a moment here. If you had to brainstorm something that would bring a group of like-minded people together, that would improve their quality of life, improve their sense of connection, what would that look like if you were the one planning it?
I think sports are excellent for that, or games. Games are great as well. But I would prefer games which are not online. So I would probably use an online platform to bring people together. That's the easiest way to communicate. And then once people arrive, I would hopefully just have everyone, put their phones away, put their devices away, and then be present. If it's sports, great. Go out there and get physical. If it's playing cards or a board game or something like this, fantastic. Maybe construction, building something, assembling something, or art, shaping something, creating something. But I think all of these things where people come together and collaborate and inspire each other, and having it not being online, I think that's really, really healthy. I heard something I think I heard in the news yesterday, where they said that they recently discovered that even just being offline for 5 minutes, which can be hard for people. Being offline for 5 minutes starts reconnecting parts of the brain, the way the brain was supposed to operate, and everything that's been destroyed by apps and social media is sort of put on hold for a little bit. But, more so, try to see if you can do it for an hour or maybe for half a day. Get away from these devices. You don't want the devices to control you. You want to be in control of them, but we are not in control anymore. I remember back in the day when you went to the bathroom, you would grab a bottle of shampoo and you'd be reading what the heck the back of this. Like, I haven't done that for a long time. You bring your phone and you something. It's in our hands constantly. You stand in line at the bakery for 2 minutes, the phone comes out. It's incredible how much of our time goes to all of these devices. And for what? So now I have a daughter, right? And a lot of the work I have is through emails, and I do interviews like with you also through my laptop and so on. But then sometimes when I'm eating lunch, for instance, I might watch a YouTube video or something like this. And then sometimes I'll go down a rabbit hole, and then suddenly it's 15, 20 minutes and I'll go like, why am I doing this? I would much, much rather be with my daughter than watching these stupid videos that are bringing me nothing.
Yeah.
And then I put my phone away, and then I go down and pick my daughter up, and then I play with her for the rest of the afternoon.
I mean, that sounds fantastic. Just like that change of perspective. And it's a good bridge for my next question, because you would have experienced what helps you stay healthy and positive and what kind of brings you down through the changing of environments, going country to country. So I imagine in some way, shape, or form, whether it looks fancy or not, you probably have some kind of like a daily protocol of your non-negotiables that you go through. If that was to be the case, can you kind of take me through like things that have to happen for you to be at your best, and maybe the things that throw you off if you allow those to take over?
Well, one thing that I did recognize, particularly while I was traveling through every country in the world without flying, was that when I got really, really sad, or when I was unstable in one way or the other, or super irritated maybe, if I could take a step back, then I would often find that I had 3 things that were going against me. It was a magic number, 3. Could be more than 3 things, right? But it seemed to be that I could deal with one problem, or maybe even 2 problems, things that weren't going my way. Maybe a visa I couldn't get and a ship I couldn't get on board. Let's say those were the 2 things that I was really struggling with. But then if you added a 3rd thing, then that would be the drop in the bucket. And it took me a while to recognize that. And then once I found out that, okay, I have 3 things that are stressing me, 3 or more things, then take that step back and isolate them and recognize that this is why I'm not feeling good. This is why I'm having a hard time. And then try to work at the, constructively. It's a lot easier to work on a problem when you identify what the problem is. And especially if you can pull your emotions out, that also is very, very helpful. But yeah, no, so I traveled through some countries which are difficult, where there are many checkpoints and that the infrastructure isn't good, and maybe the safety situation isn't good, and a lot of corruption and as such. And then I traveled in super easy countries, where you feel safe and everything works and everything's cheap and available. And I found, after a while at least, that when I was somewhere where it was easy for quite a bit of time, then it would get boring. I would miss the hard stuff, the stuff that I was cursing, earlier on, where you're like, I can't believe it. It's this hard, and why is it this hard? And I want to get away from all of this. I started missing that when it got too easy. And Yeah. So I don't know. I know one thing, and that is I'm a very ambitious person, to sit at home and say, "Hey, I'm going to go to every country in an unbroken journey without ever flying." That is ambitious. And I didn't know how ambitious it was when I decided to do it, but that is very, very ambitious. And that's very clear to me now. And that part of me, that ambitious part of me continues till this day. So, you know, I've sold more than 10,000 books in Germany. And, my sister has published 2 books, and my sister has maybe sold 100 books in total. So to her, in perspective, I'm flying. It's fantastic. I've sold 10,000 books, but I'm already looking at how do I get to 100,000 books? How do I sell 1 million? This is ambition within me to drive things further and further. And I think that's a little bit dangerous, because when are you satisfied then? At which point are you happy and content? But for me, it's almost always more. I need more. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but I'm slowly trying to identify where my own happiness lies.
Yeah.
And I know that I have 3 legs to stand on since coming back home, because once I got back to Denmark, I didn't really feel all that strong a connection to Denmark. And I felt I could be anywhere in the world. It didn't matter. But then, of course, I had my wife, and my wife was one of these 3 legs. And wherever she is, that's my home. And then I was invited to become a member of the Adventurers Club in Denmark. That's the most exclusive club in Denmark, and it's by invitation only, with only relatively few members since it was founded back in the 1930s. And you're a member for life. So that is really, really important to me. It gives me a leg to stand on, another leg to stand on, so to say. And then the third thing is when our daughter was born on December 1st, 2024. Is that right? 2024. No, 25. Yeah, it must have been 25. Is that right? Is that right? I can't even remember my daughter's birthday. She's very young.
Yeah.
Hang on. We're in 26 now, right?
Yeah. We are.
It would have to be 24. Yeah, December. December 24. When she came into the world, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying to wing it a little bit, do the best I could. But that little creature has grown on me, and I love her dearly, and I feel so connected to her. And that's definitely the third leg that I have. And I think my happiness is rooted in these 3 things. These are things that I really feel are important to me. It's my wife, it's the membership and my fellow members in the club, and my daughter. And then who cares how many books I sell and how many talks I give and where my documentary film ends up and this kind of stuff. Yeah.
I mean, all of that is very grounding, because I think it's something that a lot of other people can draw up for themselves, like understanding that the importance is rooted oftentimes in like family or in legacy or in sense of like common connection. Lots of things to kind of expand on. But one of the things that I was curious about, because you've been doing so much speaking, is there a distinctive speaking opportunity that you can recall where it left you feeling some strong emotion? And if so, what was that emotion?
Sorry, in regards to speaking?
Yeah, just speaking events where you were speaking in front of maybe a particular audience and it just left you feeling a certain kind of way.
I was speaking I forget if it was in Kenya or if it was in Tanzania. I think it was in Kenya. And it was going really well. And I was speaking about something emotional. And then a woman in the audience started crying. And I get different reactions. I get silence sometimes. Sometimes I want silence. I get laughter. I get, all sorts of reactions, but I rarely have someone cry in the audience. And that was the first time it happened. It has happened a few times since. And I recognized that what I was talking about struck this woman in a very personal way, that she had some real life experience with what I was talking about, or this was very close to her in that moment. So she started crying, and I didn't know. I felt responsible. I was, everyone's facing me, and I brought this upon her, right? I said something, and as a result, she's now crying. So I felt very responsible. And I went to this woman and I tried to comfort her, and she said it was okay and it was fine. And I went back and I tried to continue speaking and entertaining the audience. Yeah, so that left me a little baffled. But yeah, so I've spoken in 71 countries now. So I've had the opportunity to speak in front of people of all sorts of cultures, which is interesting. People don't always laugh at the same stuff, but they often do. But yeah, no, so you have to be a little bit careful also what you say, that something which is culturally appropriate one place might not be culturally appropriate somewhere else.
Yeah.
And you might say something which is interpreted in a different way in a different country as well. So it does come with some responsibility for sure.
I want to pause this conversation for a second, and it's not to shift gears, but just to acknowledge something. The store at store.invigoratetraining.com isn't really just about merch. It's my way of staying connected with this community of people who's followed along with me throughout my 20s and now into my mid-30s. You'll find women's fitted racerbacks with the line, "I might look normal, but deep down I question why I agreed to do 40 push-ups per day." Because sometimes humor comes after you've done the work. And there's the legacy CL gear, the hat and the toque that you see me wearing all the time, along with t-shirts that say, "Don't bet against the quiet ones." Because often the underdogs are the biggest game changers in life. There are custom shoes that I designed myself with the mantra, "Stay kind, stay strong, keep going," built right into the design. And there's also Park Far Away Club stickers and reusable bags for all your shopping needs. Additionally, I've created a line of fully human apparel, a reminder that self-improvement isn't just a one-size-fits-all template, it's personal. If we were all the exact same, we'd never truly be human. All pricing on the website is in Canadian dollars, shipping is inclusive, and your orders are often shipped domestically. This helps avoid tariffs or extra fees. This store exists because of you, and my career exists because of you. I'm genuinely grateful you're here. I'm grateful for all the people who work with me, and I'm so excited that we get to build something meaningful together. If anything here resonates, you can find it at my store at store.invigoratetraining.com. And thank you for being part of my world. I mean, that absolutely makes sense, and I even think about it when I interview people from other countries as to, like, if I ask them a question, I never want to put a person on a hot seat where they wouldn't be sure how to answer it. I like to try and keep myself as neutral as I can to make it like an interesting conversation for just about anybody I could have on the show. Now, this next question that I have is sort of a bridge or a tribute to the past episodes where at the end I would always ask the same question. I stepped away from it, but I brought it back because it has that nostalgic feel, and a lot of people have found value in the answers. So the question is, if you were to give one piece of advice to someone on how to live their life to the fullest in the most authentic way, what would that piece of advice be?
Wow. That's not an easy question to answer, is it? I think there's true value in being true to yourself. I mean, most people are okay and good personalities, right? And so you could probably go with that. Being yourself, be true to who you are. I think that's helpful. I think taking chances also has real value. And there's a saying that you only regret the things you didn't do. That's not true. It sounds nice, but it's not true. You can also regret things you've done. but there is a lot of truth in, you know, I went to this film festival and I spent money and time getting on a plane and going there, and spent days and effort and this kind of stuff. And it didn't really, I didn't really get out of it what I thought. I thought it would be more a big deal, and it would be more fun, and it would be more interesting. But, so maybe I was a little bit disappointed at the point when I left to return home. But at least I know, because if I hadn't gone, I would have built it up in my head and said, we'll be meeting stars and getting interviewed, and the room would be full, and there would be endless questions and endless interest, and I would have run into the CEO of a streaming service or something like this, and all this kind of stuff. So you can build all of this up, how amazing it would have been. But then that might have been where I was at in my head if I didn't go, right? But I did make this decision. I did take a chance. I did say, okay, I'm going to spend some money on this. I'm going to go and do this. And now I know. So there's that element to it. Something else I might say is that if you're in Denmark and you go with public transportation and you step inside a bus and there's no one else in the bus, you sit down wherever you want. The second person who comes into the bus has to do this mathematical sort of equation to work out which seat is the furthest away from you, because that's what we're like in Denmark. And then you go and you sit down as far away from that person, and then the next person and the next person and the next person. And eventually someone is forced to sit next to someone else, and then it continues from there. Now, in a lot of the world, you go into a bus, you sit down wherever you want. The next person comes in. It's an easy choice. There's only one seat, which is the correct seat, and that's the seat next to you. And the reason for that is that that's the only seat where you find a conversation. And that conversation, worst case, is entertainment for as long as the ride lasts. Best case, it's the beginning of a friendship. It can be a job opportunity. It can be a good connection. It can develop ideas. And, so many good things can come out of that. So I think that's a good way to explain the difference between taking a chance and not. Sit down next to someone and take a chance on a conversation. Take a chance on, if you were dreaming about working abroad, go out and find that job. If you always dreamt about traveling, pack a bag and go, take a chance. I think that's a big part of leading a happy life. It's getting some stuff done.
Yeah, I really liked that. Basically, getting on a bus and how a lot of people experience it versus just that simple shift as to like you getting on the bus for connection. So how are you going to get connection if you're seated 5 seats away from it? And I think that's something that a lot of people can kind of like take home with them and maybe implement into their day to day. But with that said,
one more thing I might just add is I think another route to happiness is not to focus too much on yourself, but to focus on other people. So try to be more for other people. And if they do the same, then, it kind of comes back around. But I think there's a lot of happiness in knowing that you made someone else happy.
Yeah, I agree. Like as a trainer who has to focus on other people a lot, I find that is like the key, because when you're trying to improve others, it improves you faster because you're not so worried about insecurities or anything like that that can kind of drag a person and slow them down.
It makes sense, yeah.
So I just wanted to say how grateful I am for the time that you had for me today. It's been good to catch up, and I want to be respectful of your time. I'm definitely going to be promoting this book, so people will know how to find it, where to find it. I'll add all those links to the show notes. Are there any other like sentiments or things that you want to leave the audience with today?
No, I just want to say thank you to you, and I hope we can catch up again in another 6 years' time.
Yes.
And yeah, I'll just try to remind people that the world is a much better place than what we give it credit for. On a final note, I might just say that when I got back home after going through every country in the world, I had a look at the world map and I recognized that I hadn't been to a single country in the world where I had not been shown some form of kindness or assistance and help. And on the basis of that, I came to think that as long as we're dealing with people, we're dealing with a reversed lottery,
Mhm.
wherein a normal lottery, you buy a ticket, the chances are against you, you expect to lose. But as long as you're dealing with people, you can expect to win. And the outcome of most engagements with people is winning and winning and winning and winning. It's possible to lose, but the odds are unbelievably in our favor.
Yeah. It's crazy to think about. I'm glad you ended it on that note because it might give people the reassurance that they need to take a chance and make a new friend.
Well, I'm happy to hear that. Thank you so much, Chris.
Yeah. Thank you, Thor. We'll definitely set up a follow-up 6 years from now, or maybe even sooner if you have the time.
Let's